The sound of a telephone echoed through the silence. A wrinkled hand reached for it hesitantly. The face that emerged from the shadows was marked by the weight of the years. Fatigue, sorrow, and a past that refused to fade. This was Tom Doherty, a retired detective whose eyes had seen too much and whose heart had endured too many losses. He lived alone in an old wooden house by a quiet lake, far removed from the world of blood and sirens. For over 7 years, he had not touched a single case. Not since that one, the case that cost him his partner and with it the last piece of himself. But tonight, everything changed. "Tom, please. I need you to come back." The voice on the line trembled with desperation. It belonged to the mayor of Fernwell, a small rural town tucked so far from civilization that even maps seemed to forget it existed. "I'm retired," Tom replied flatly. "Not sure what help I'd be anymore. You need to see it for yourself. Something's wrong. It's not just about people. It's about something that shouldn't be here." The line went silent for a moment. Then, almost in a whisper, the mayor added, "It started with a dark shadow in the old amusement park, laughing sounds in the dead of night, and now, 2 people have disappeared." The word amusement park made Tom freeze. He'd heard of the place, Happyland Amusement Park, once a haven of laughter and joy. Its echoes of children's giggles had long since faded. 15 years ago, it made national headlines after a mysterious worker's death. Since then, it was sealed off and left to rot. No one went near it. Early the next morning, Tom packed a single travel bag. Just the essentials. A notebook, a flashlight, and his old service pistol. Nothing more. He boarded a slow-moving countryside train that meandered through forests and vast, empty fields. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the rails sounded like a faint heartbeat, steady and melancholic. As the scenery blurred past the window, Tom sat in silence, revisiting the ghosts of his past. His first case, a simple theft that led to a smuggling ring. His last case, a murderer he never caught. And the case, the one that shattered him, the one that still visited his dreams. Some cases had shadows that didn't stay in the past. He had learned that the hard way. And deep down, he feared this might be another. Fernwell, a forgotten town. The train screeched to a halt at an old, dust-covered station. Tom stepped out into the cold morning air, which carried a scent of rotting wood and long-forgotten days. Fernwell was a place untouched by time. Wooden houses with peeling paint, rusty cars from another era, and people who looked as though hope had left them long ago. They stared at Tom as he walked past. Not with curiosity, but with quiet dread. As if his presence meant the nightmare was real. Waiting for him at the station was the mayor himself. A small-framed man in a worn-out suit. Tie pulled so tightly it seemed to be choking him. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Doherty," he said, his voice wavering slightly. "I came because you said people were missing," Tom answered plainly. "It's not just people going missing," the mayor said, glancing around nervously. "It's like something is taking them." The soft morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of an old hotel in Fernwell. Tom Doherty sat with a cup of black coffee in hand, staring out at the town's empty main street. The entire place seemed to breathe slowly, as if its lungs had long been filled with dust. The townsfolk moved with unease, as though something unseen was watching them. The mayor showed up early, holding a rusty metal box in his hands. "We just found this in the storage room of the old police station. It might help you." Tom took the box carefully and used the tip of his folding knife to pry it open. Inside was a single reel-to-reel audio tape and a faded file folder, handwritten in shaky script on the cover. Testimony of George Malcolm, ride operator. 15 years ago, Tom borrowed an old tape player from the police office and hooked it up. A wave of static filled the room before a frail, elderly man's voice slowly emerged from the silence. "It started the night the storm came. I remember being alone at the Ferris wheel, doing a routine check. But that sound, it wasn't the wind, it was laughter." The voice on the tape began to tremble. "I turned around and saw a shadow shaped like a person, but it had no face, no eyes, nothing, just standing there, under the flickering lights of the ride. I shouted, asked who it was, but it didn't answer. When it started walking toward me, I ran. I ran as fast as I could. The others weren't so lucky." The sound of heavy breathing came through the tape. 2 days later, Frank, the mechanic, he vanished. No one ever found him, except for a piece of flesh stuck beneath the roller coaster track, then the tape cut off abruptly. The folder contained documents stating that George Malcolm had died only a week after giving his testimony. The official cause of death was listed as accidental fall down the stairs at his residence. But in the coroner's report, a small handwritten note in red ink stood out, lacerations on the back, consistent with a sharp object, not consistent with a fall. Tom narrowed his eyes and stroked his chin. He knew instantly this wasn't an accident. It was a silencing. Inside the folder was a detailed map of the old amusement park. A red circle had been drawn around a particular area labeled Haunted House Ride. Next to the circle, a scribbled note read, "Frank went in here and never came out." Tom made up his mind tonight he would enter that haunted house. A half-moon hung in the sky above the abandoned amusement park. Tom wore his long coat and carried with him a flashlight, a sidearm, and a digital voice recorder. The wind rustled through the leaves. Rides moaned and creaked with rust. And then, a faint, childlike giggle echoed through the night. Hey, 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 the sound threaded itself through Tom's breath. He stood before the haunted house, a rotting wooden structure, partially collapsed, but still looming like a dead beast that refused to stop twitching. The door squealed like a wounded animal as it opened. Inside was the stench of mold, rotten wood, and wax figures warped by time and heat. Tom's flashlight cut through the dark, revealing a headless witch statue, grinning clowns, and floorboards that groaned with every cautious step. He approached a door bolted from the inside. Strange. No one should have been in here for over 15 years. Tom pried it open with his knife. As it creaked ajar, the first thing he saw was a journal lying in the center of the floor, surrounded by a dried circle of blood. Tom picked up the journal and flipped through the pages. The handwriting seemed to ripple and distort as he read. I saw it again. The faceless shadow is not human, is not a ghost, but it knows I'm afraid. They said this park used to be a hideout for criminals. They killed people, buried them under the rides, the laughter on rainy nights. It never stopped. On the last page, the handwriting twisted and desperate. If you're reading this, I'm already dead. Don't let it out. Don't let it find you. The voice recorder in Tom's hand suddenly started picking up interference even though it hadn't been turned on. Tom, can you hear me? A faint whisper came from the tiny speaker. It was Frank's voice. They're hiding in the shadows. It's not alone. Then silence. Tom looked up and saw a shadow move past a broken window. He bolted out of the haunted house without looking back. In the dead of night, Fernwell was draped in darkness, every corner swallowed by shadows like a black veil covering the town. Even the hotel where Tom Doherty was staying shared the same unsettling stillness, silent and suffocating. After returning from the haunted house, he sat at the wooden desk in his room, going over everything he had uncovered. The audio recordings, Frank's notebook, the strange shadows, it was all starting to piece together into a twisted image. But he knew it still wasn't complete. There was something still hidden in the amusement park, and he had to find it before it found him. 2 a.m. while the entire town lay in deep sleep. Something stirred Tom from his nap. Bang! 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 Metal clanging. It was coming from the direction of the abandoned amusement park. Tom sprang up instantly, grabbing his flashlight and pistol. He stepped out of the hotel and into the dark street leading to the amusement park. The flickering street lamps offered a dim, stuttering glow, as if warning him to stay away. But Tom was a detective, and ghostly warnings had never stopped him before. When he arrived at the park, everything was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Then, clank, screech, the sound of machinery. He turned. An old roller coaster cart was slowly climbing the incline, creaking its way upward, as though someone had activated the system. Tom moved closer. Flashlight pointed toward the control panel. It should have been broken for years, but it was active, blinking red lights flashing in the darkness. He reached out to touch one of the buttons, and just then, "Don't press it. You'll wake it up." A whisper, faint and chilling, from right behind him. Tom spun around. No one was there, only a thin fog creeping over the ground. And in that fog, he saw a translucent figure of a man, wearing old worker's clothes, half of his face torn away, yet his eyes locked right onto Tom. "My name's Ben. I used to work here, before it killed me." Tom froze. This was the impossible staring him in the face, no longer something he could deny. It's not just a shadow. It's made of hate, pain, and our blood. It lives underneath this park. It's more than a spirit. It's death alive. Ben pointed toward the back of the old outdoor stage in the amusement park. Beneath that's where we're buried. The missing workers. That's our grave. The old park owner, he was tied to human trafficking. They murdered people, buried them here, cursed this place forever. Tom took a deep breath, fighting the fear rising in his chest. And the thing you mentioned? Ben turned his face away, trembling. It's not a regular ghost. It's born of the hatred of dozens of victims. It became something with no form, no heart, but one purpose: to kill. Ben began to fade, but just before vanishing completely, he handed Tom a small voice recorder. I recorded this the moment I died. You need to listen, but only in complete darkness. That's the only way to hear what's hidden in the waves. Then Ben was gone. Tom stood alone in the stillness, knowing there was no turning back. He returned to the hotel. Inside his room, he turned off every light. He placed the recorder on the desk and pressed play. The first sound was Ben's heavy breathing. It's here. I'm hiding under the stage. Its voice, it's not human. It's like dozens of screams all at once. The tape warbled with static. Then came a screeching noise like something sharp dragging against steel. And then, not speaking any language, whispers layered on top of each other. He shouldn't be here. He'll die like we did. Do you know who owned the park? And then one voice came through the clearest. We saw him. Tonight, in the mirror maze, Tom grabbed the amusement park map again. The mirror maze, an old attraction located on the park's west side. He had seen the name before, but no one had ever mentioned it. Tonight, he would go there. The full moon hung high in the sky, blanketed by drifting fog. Tom stepped into the maze of mirrors, shattered glass everywhere. Some panels were stained with old blood. Some reflected images that weren't his own. One reflection smiled, but he wasn't smiling. Footsteps echoed from every direction. One panel trembled, and a shadow moved behind his reflection. Don't turn around, don't turn around, the whisper circled in his head. But he did the opposite. He turned and came face to face with a black shadow, formless, faceless, voiceless. But it knew him. It moved like it had once been human. And when its reflection touched his, every mirror shattered at once, a tidal wave of screams erupting from the broken glass. Tom sprinted out of the maze, repeating to himself, this isn't just a murder case. It's a curse of death that refuses to sleep. After the carousel, Tom discovers an uncharted underground passage. The rotting wooden stairs lead to a pitch-black basement, filled with wooden crates and old chains. A foul stench fills the air. There, he uncovers human trafficking evidence, children's shoes, empty water bottles, and faint whispers. Something had been trapped here, and some things may never have left. After the mirror maze incident, Tom Doherty knew he was dealing with something beyond any detective manual. He returned to his hotel with the old amusement park map and Ben's notes scribbled in a notebook. Amidst several lines of notes, one line caught his eye. Do not trust the area behind the carousel. It's not on the map, but there's a way down. He compared it to the map. While the carousel was circled, no information existed about what was behind it. It was the blind spot of the truth. Around 3 a.m., Tom returned to the park once more, amidst an unusually thick fog. The wind was eerily still, no sound of night birds or insects. He walked up to the old carousel, its paint chipped, and several of the wooden horses were broken in half. But behind it, there was a mound of earth that looked unnatural. Something seemed to be hidden beneath. Tom shone his flashlight and found a small wooden door buried under a pile of dead leaves and grass. It was nailed shut with rusty nails, and the edges of the door had deep scratch marks, as if something had clawed at it. He used a crowbar to pry it open, and the smell of decay rushed out immediately. Behind the door was a rotting wooden staircase that led deep into the darkness. The flashlight's beam couldn't reach the bottom, it was too deep, and the smell of decay grew stronger with each step. Tom descended one step at a time. The wood creaked underfoot with every step. Creak, creak. The walls were scratched with marks, dried blood, and human nail fragments embedded in the cracks of the wood. He knew This was the prison, and it wasn't just confining souls. Upon reaching the bottom, Tom found a large basement, low ceilings, the floor packed with dirt. His flashlight illuminated rows of large wooden crates along the walls. Some crates bore the amusement park's emblem, while others had dried bloodstains seeping through. On the floor, he discovered traces of items that made his breath catch. A single child's shoe, torn and stained with dried blood. An old, empty water bottle. A fake child's eyeball. A torn black and white photo of two smiling children in front of the carousel. Tom collapsed to the ground, speaking to himself. They used the amusement park as a front, lured children in, and took them down here. He ventured further, discovering a wall with iron chains strung across, attached to ankle cuffs. Nearby were old mats and scraps of torn cloth stains of a dark color, uncertain whether they were blood or mold. But when he touched them, the chains still felt faintly warm. Something recently was locked up here. Suddenly his flashlight flickered, and the whispers began to rise in the air. "Don't come down here. They left us. We're cold, we're hungry, we want to go home." The whispers of children overlapping as if coming from all directions. Suddenly an old film camera in the corner of the room flashed. Click! Tom spun around, but no one was there. As he approached, he saw that the camera still had film inside. He picked it up. Next to the camera there was a handwritten note from a child. "Detective, please help us." He froze, unsure whether to feel sorrow or fear. He slowly used his foot to tap the dirt floor. A hollow sound echoed from beneath one particular spot, like there was a cavity. He knelt down and began to dig with his hands until he uncovered a small wooden lid. He opened it and found a small metal box. Inside were a notebook listing missing people, a photo of an elderly man in a suit standing with police officers, and a tape recorder. He played the tape. On it, a man's voice spoke calmly. "People see kids as just part of the business. Don't think too much about it. You'll make money. Lock them up under the amusement park. No one dares go down there anyway." The screams get swallowed by the sound of the rides. The voice stopped. Tom clenched his fists, his heart raced. All the clues pointed to the former amusement park executives and some police officers from 20 years ago. They had collaborated to cover up the disappearances of children and used this place as a prison. As he was about to leave the room, the sound of footsteps echoed from the stairs above. Not just one set of footsteps, but many. Children? Spirits? No. It was heavier. The sound of dragging chains. Tom turned around to grab the flashlight, but the light went out. The whole room plunged into darkness, and the whispers grew louder. "You saw it. That means you have to stay." Tom submitted all the evidence to the authorities, but it was dismissed. Those in power are directly involved in this evil. After the night he discovered the hidden basement and the shocking evidence, Tom Doherty returned to his temporary hotel in the small town near the amusement park. His body was exhausted, but his hands still trembled with a mix of anger and confusion. He sat down at the table in his room, typing up a detailed report, including photos and audio recordings he had made throughout his investigation. The documents he was about to submit to the authorities contained a photo of a child's shoe covered in mud, an old bottle of water with faint bloodstains, an amusement park map with no mention of the basement, the whispers he recorded in the basement, the soft voices of children. He was sure that once the authorities received these documents, justice would begin. But it didn't happen. 2 days later, he received a letter from the central agency stating insufficient evidence and instructing him to cease the investigation immediately. Enraged, he called the lead investigator, but the person on the other end simply replied, "Stop, Tom. You don't know what you're touching." Tom immediately realized there were powerful people involved and they were concealing the truth. That night, as he was preparing to leave the amusement park, the whisper of a little girl echoed, "Thank you for helping us, but we're still here." Tom refused to give up. He decided to return to the amusement park one last time. That night, there was no moonlight. The sky was unnaturally dark. He brought a small video camera and flashlight to document everything for further evidence. He walked past the carousel, through the ruins of the shooting gallery, and approached the Ferris wheel, which had long since stopped spinning. That was when he heard the whisper of a little girl. Her voice was sweet, but filled with sorrow. "Thank you for helping us, but we're still here." He spun around, looking for anyone. No one was there. But when he looked up at the Ferris wheel, in the stillness of the dark, so quiet that he could hear his own breath suddenly. Creak! A loud metallic sound came from the Ferris wheel. It began to move, slowly, inch by inch. After being still for so many years, it slowly started turning, as if some unseen force was commanding it to move. Tom took 2 steps back, unable to believe his eyes. At each seat that passed in front of him, it seemed there were faint shadows of people sitting. Shadows of small children with their heads bowed. Shadows of a young woman in a park worker's uniform. Shadows of a man in an orange shirt, someone he had seen in old photographs. And then, the Ferris wheel, which had been still, began to turn again, slowly, amidst the silence of death. He now understood that even though he knew the truth, even though he had exposed the human trafficking and the evil of the past, the system that covered it up still held power over justice. And those who had fallen victim were still forgotten. What he could do wasn't to seek vengeance for them, but to remember that they had once existed. That final night, he stood watching the Ferris wheel slowly turn until it stopped. The shadows gradually faded away. The voice of a child whispered, "Can you tell them to remember us, please?" Tom nodded, tears in his eyes. Then he walked away in the silence,